Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Stone Genius Podcast. My name's Ro, you know me. I'm the Stone Genius. I'm often stoned. I'm always a genius. I am really excited for today because I have a guest on the program who we got to reconnect a short while ago, through social media and things, and I so wanted to have him on the show. So I'm going to welcome Rick Ross, one of the co-owners of Tina's Trucks. Is that correct, Rick?
And not the rapper, yes.
Yes.
That is correct.
No,
yes.
And I was going to ask you that. How often do you get, I know that on some things you use your middle initial, but do you get that a lot?
All the time, thank God for my middle initial. But the good thing is, if I was an axe murderer and you try to Google me, you're not going to find anything. You're just going to find the rapper, which is good. So,
yeah.
Ironically, every day. I mean, like I'm on the phone, if I call my health insurance company, and I dread it, actually, I do. And I give them the name.
Right.
Oh, you ever get? Yeah, I do. Every time I
Do you get tired of that? Because, that's why I try not to do that to people because...
Right.
Like, I'm left-handed, and I am at 55-year-old. If someone else tells me, "Oh, you're left-handed," oh my God, I hate it. Yeah, I am. How did you figure that out? Was it the way I was writing something with my left hand? Congratulations.
Yeah, no, it's just like, every time when I used to live in LA for 14 years. So every time I flew back to Kansas City or anywhere with my company, it was like, Leroy, check this shit out. Come here, look, this thing, look. And they'd like, no way. They look at my ID. And I'm like, I'm going to be late for my flight. Can you guys, can we hurry up? Or
So here's the thing. I'm going to, one thing about this show is we may jump around. So I'm sorry, you'll just have to follow along. But it leads me to the next thing because we're talking name recognition here. And I was trying to think of the last time that you and I were together. And what I was thinking of was Clearwater Beach down in Florida.
That's right.
Then I had this, and I will be one of the first to admit, well, a few things. I'm a stoner, and I do believe that I travel through parallel universes. But I started thinking the last time you and I were together, we were with Tommy Morrison.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not imagining that. I could have sworn that you and I and Tommy Morrison were at some bar downtown. I mean, but it was just weird because that came out of nowhere. And I don't remember anything except I feel like the lights were on, like we were there after hours maybe.
Yeah, as most of those nights ended up typically.
Yeah.
We never went home early and read a book. So
yes.
It was, I can't recall, those days with him, and, he was a good friend of mine, and sadly miss him dearly, but obviously those days were reckless, and as I look back, and one of my buddies from Jersey who is, was friends with Tom like I was for 30 years, we think back, and we're like, we don't remember anything from age 21 to 25, really.
No shit. Or when I think about it, it seems like those years, there were like 10 to 14 days in a week. It just seems like I was going out all the time. It just seemed like I did so much. And like now it seems like all I do is work, sleep, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah. You're an adult, but back then we were kids and we just did it, what we did and hung out and partied and it made, you never thought you'd get old, right? Now
yes.
I'm like I'll be 54 in May and I can barely walk or wipe my ass because of my body breaking down from having severe arthritis. So it's good time. Should be in a wheelchair by the age of 70. But
well, that's a boo hiss.
I wish we could go back in time.
Yeah. So Bobby, my wife, will ask me like when I complain, and I have arthritis as well.
Sure.
But it's funny. She's like, well, so here's the thing. I fell last summer. Mm-hmm. And so when I came in, I was like, fell and I'd torn up my hands and my wife's like, well, how? And I go, well, I was walking and then I was no longer walking. I was on the way to the ground. She goes, well, did you trip? I go, no, you don't understand. I was walking and then I was not walking.
Right.
And she just could. And I go, you know what? Let's give this 7 years for you to catch up. And I bet you're going to figure this out on your own. So, okay. Yeah. So now that we've established the last time, because that just came out of nowhere, I was just like, hold on. Me, Rick, Tommy, So we know each other from way back. But what is your history? Because what you do now, and Tina's Trucks is designer cuisine, brought to you via a really nice food truck.
Yes.
So That's different than what you used to do. So tell the listeners a little bit about what you used to do before Tina's Trucks.
Yeah, so I started out in the hotel industry when I was, my father was in the hotel industry, and I started as a busboy for him when I was 16 years old, and worked my way up to he put me under a GM at one of his hotels, and this gentleman was kind enough to put me through a management training program they call the MID, Manager Development Training Program. So from the age of 16 until 19, I was going through and worked in every facet of the hotel industry. Worked a summer in housekeeping, worked a summer in engineering. I worked, it was from A to Z because, he was right. He's like, you really can't understand how to do your business if you haven't done everything. People come to you.
So is that true? You do hear people say
Yeah.
that. And part of me wants to be like, well, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
And honestly, you wouldn't want me to do that because I'm deficient in many things. So, but you
Right.
thought that was beneficial for you, learning that part of the business.
Yeah, I mean, it's not only, you would never put it on a resume, obviously, but for people to come to you, and the point was once you become a leader or GM, that people will come to you
Right.
for questions, and you need to answer them and accommodate them. So, if those questions pertain to housekeeping, engineering, or productivity, or financials, or whatever it was, you better know the answer. So, it did benefit me tremendously, and a lot of my friends that went on to college, either it was Michigan State, UNLV, or other hotel schools, once we all settled out 10 years later, it was like I was further along in the process than they were because they spent those 4 years and I just went to 2 years of JICO at the hospitality management program there. But, they went to these schools for 4 years and I was further along than them because I had, they had never done that. They
Right.
didn't have the luck to work for a GM that was like, okay, Rick, this is what you do in A, B, C situations.
So in the schools so is it called hospitality management or what?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was hospital.
So the schools
had hospitality law and all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
So the schools that offer those programs, did they give those students did they have like an internship where they basically did the same thing that you did? Or was it, well, I want to be a GM someday, so I'm going to go just watch what a GM does? Or did they will they put those people in class through the same paces, like introduce them to housekeeping, introduce them to food and beverage?
Yeah.
They do. Okay.
They do. Yeah, it just depends. I mean, I was lucky enough because I had it in my family already, and I had one leg up on the process. But other as you're speaking of them, yes, that's the way the universities would infiltrate, so to speak, or get these people entrenched in the industry on the other side. And everybody, the people I met at JUCO during the program, I mean, they were working part-time in hotels. Obviously, if you weren't, you'd be, why the hell are you in hospitality management,
Right.
or restaurants? So yeah, met a lot of people during that 2 year span from 87, 89 before I graduated from JUCO, and
that was Johnson County, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we're Johnson County Community College in Kansas. So we do have a lot of listeners that are actually worldwide, so they may they might not know what that term was. So I was just clearing that up for them.
It's called the JOCO bubble. Yep.
So did you want, because your family was in the business, was that something that you always wanted to do? Because like my grandfather was a pharmacist on my dad's side. And then my dad had done something else. He was in business administration, but had also got his pharmacy license. So he went back into pharmacy. It was something he always wanted to do. And I think he had seen that from his dad. And even though I could
have a deep history. Deep history with drugs, then.
Yes.
Like.
It actually at the way I opened my father's eulogy, he passed away almost a year ago. But the way I opened it up was, most of you know my father. I'm sure that all of you have either bought drugs or taken drugs bought from my dad. And everyone just laughed because being a pharmacist, I'm sure some of the younger people were like, what the fuck is he talking about? So, but was it something that you always were drawn to? Because it just seemed like my dad really I could appreciate a pharmacist. I liked what he did, but I didn't want to go through the schooling. There were a lot of things that I was unattracted to.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. I mean, I can imagine what a pharmacist would have to know and be proficient in to be successful. Obviously, it's you're talking milligrams, and this would kill somebody versus
Right.
that. And
Because doctors don't know that. If another doctor wrote a prescription, they don't check that, but a pharmacist would go, you have both of these. So, but did you feel called to not called, but did you feel drawn to the family business?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, I did. I mean, growing up as a kid, the second youngest out of six, I had two older brothers and three sisters, and younger sister, then two older sisters. So my two older brothers, one chose to follow my father's path and get into the hotel industry. The other brother went down a different path, but my oldest brother of the family did. And but he didn't do it the way I did. I worked from A to Z, started as a busboy, worked my way up, and he started, went to college and came back, and then he was handed the VP position of the company, and blah, blah, blah. So, we, not that there was any competition. I was in LA or by then and working there, but yes, it was always something that, I used to go when I was a child. Remember my father, he owned the Glenwood Manor right here at 95th and Metcalf for 30 years. And I remember going with him and being enamored with, the way that I witnessed the interactions with him and the employees, right? It was like, Mr. Ross, it's great to see you. How are you? Not there kissing his ass, but the fact is that he used his position of power to be, as you know, people with positions of power can misuse them.
Right.
And obviously to their benefit. My father wasn't like that, and I always wanted to be like that. It was cool because I felt like every time he walked in, he was treated like he was the president of the United States, and just because he simply walked in the door, and which I realized after I got into that position was just ass kissing, right? These people would come up to you,
right? But
he was never, he was very fair to his employees, and to this day, same with me. I keep in contact with a lot of my managers, the people that worked underneath me when I was a VP, after my years as a GM, that were promoted and moved into different positions, and I still keep in contact with a lot of GMs that are still in the system that worked underneath me, and it's
and you went, so you weren't. Well, I don't want to call it. Hold on, I want to do this real quick.
Sure.
Okay, so did you just say that your dad, your family owned Glenwood Manor Theater?
Yes.
So
not the theater part was a separate.
Okay.
Dickinson, Glenn Dickinson wanted to keep the movie theater separate then because it was an AMC.
Right.
It was an
okay.
So he kept that separate from the hotel.
Okay, so your dad, I did it. So we had our prom at Shining Mission South there in '86 at the Glenwood Manor.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and that was when I was so excited because the Steve Miller Band was going to be there. But then when we got there, I believe it was a cover Steve Miller Band.
Yeah,
which was there. Yes, which was horrible. So I just ask about because Glenwood Manor, the hotel, miniature golf used to be back there. I mean, so that corner of Overland Park meant so much to me. And I just had a movie, Tim Lytle, who is a movie producer and things. We were talking about movies on a previous podcast, and I just gushed about Glenwood Manor, about the theater there. So, no, but when I heard you mention it.
A buddy of mine was in a movie, Jason Wiles, who went to West. He and I have been friends for 35 years, and he's a successful actor. He was one of the lead police officers on for First Watch, was on NBC for 7 or 8 years, and he did a lot of others, done movies with, and he's been in several movies, and he was on Unknown Persons and a lot of things. But anyway, we still keep contact today, and obviously when I lived in LA, we were in touch a lot. But he filmed a movie there. That was his first movie ever. He was like a actor/extra, and it was with Michael Landon. It was an after.
I remember that when they built that fucking house where McDonald's is now.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, he was in that. Small world. Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah, I do remember that because so that the listeners, and I don't remember the name. I don't remember the name, but where
it was called after. It was. Oh my God. All I remember is it was we were still kids, obviously, but I remember the scenery of Michael Landon driving down Metcalf, right? You could see Bobside Ford in the background. It was just like the first cool thing I had seen. I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. That's pretty awesome. This guy's a big time actor, and obviously can't say he's been put on the map much further now than then. But it was kind of a cool thing to watch and the evolution of that, and see my buddy's career kind of take off from that role. And he was on 90210. He was Colin. He was the cokehead on 90210. Colin Robbins.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Tim Lytle produced, directed, and wrote the movie Man Baby. And it is an award-winning film, but it is about a grown man that dresses in a diaper and acts like a baby because his wife, who obviously didn't have this conversation before they got married, did not want to have kids. So he thought by acting like a baby, she would show that she's a good mother and want to have kids. Now, I will tell you, it is actually, it is a very good film. And whatever you think at the midway point of this film, it is not how it ends. I will just say that. But that is so cool that, I mean, when you talk about your friend being in that movie and such a, I forget just in our little, you know, Overland Park, Kansas, which we don't think is big, how much has actually happened to us and for us. I mean, this is an amazing place to be from.
Oh, it is. I mean, like you look at, and it's crazy to think of like Paul Rudd, and you have Sudeikis, and you have what's the guy in the South with Riggle, and you know all these guys are right within a year of each other in the same hub, and what they've accomplished and what they've done. Like Rudd's getting stupid money. I mean, I haven't talked to the guy since high school, but he's getting like dumb, stupid money for movies, like $15 million. It's crazy. And then, you know, obviously Riggle's killing it, and Sudeikis is on Ted Lasso.
And there's another guy that was in all those movies who has a tie into Kansas City, a bald guy.
David Koechner.
Yes. So he actually got married to my sister's best friend growing up, Lee Morgan. And so
that was my doctor. Her dad was my doctor, and I know her sister we were friends. And
I mean, that's what's so crazy is that just in the, because I'm not sure, and I've never heard anyone else talk about their hometown, unless it's like New York City or something, that's been able to talk about like a little suburb that has pumped out so much talent, so many memories, so many good things have come out of this small area, which led you, which is funny because then it led you to the West Coast where you decided to take up. So on the West Coast.
That being a point. Yeah, I mean, that was comical because when I was there, as soon as I would tell people where you're from, they were like, all they're thinking about is they're like cows, farms. I'm like, oh, Kansas? Yeah. Really? Now you're in LA? And I'm like, yeah, I can pull it off. Trust me.
Is this a big change for you, Rick? Are you able to handle it?
Yeah. Well, are you taking on too much? Can you handle this? I mean, we have, you know, HOV lanes here, and we have all kinds of different rules, and you know, we're full of, it's all liberals, you know, a staunch Republican, and still am, but very, you know, California should be its own planet, not a state.
When you got out there, that's when we were already connected on Instagram, but when I really started following you and interacting with you is when it would turn winter here and you were still playing golf out there. And I was so fucking pissed. I would be like, that's nice. Yeah, what did you shoot today? And just like I was like, oh, I just wanted to, And never once did you send me a wish you were here. I was always like, oh, I shot 76 today, fucker. And I was like, oh, thank you. No, actually, I remember the one time I think I posted a picture about golf. You made fun of my yellow golf ball. Which was a whole mental thing. I seemed at that point in my life to not be able to transition my good play on the practice tee to the golf course, and I noticed that the practice balls were yellow. So I decided I would start playing with a yellow ball. And I will not say that the ball hindered me, but I will say that the yellow ball did not help me.
It doesn't. No,
it doesn't. But
I would assume you graduated from that to a pink ball, probably, right?
I probably have. No, I actually, talking about breaking down, I was playing about 200 rounds a year. And in 2018, I was having trouble with my left thumb. And so I went to a doctor. I said, hey, what can we do? And he goes, this operation will be great. You'll be able to play even more golf, and you'll play it pain-free. So I had the operation. The thumb surgery went fine, but it set off some genetic thing that I didn't know I had because I was adopted called Dupuytren's contracture. And so instead of playing more golf, I've played now 18 holes in 5 years.
You're shitting me.
No, I went from playing, 150 to 200 rounds a year to be.
Well, I mean, that's, you and I have identical stories. I mean, like, what were you shooting when you were playing 200 rounds a year? Were you scratch? Were you?
So I was mid 70s generally. I never went to the range, so it was not that uncommon for me to just. Every once in a while, it looked like I'd never picked up a golf club, which was funny because if I was playing with someone, we'd play one day and I'd shoot like 74. The next day, I'd be like 87, and they'd be like, so, and I don't ask. I don't know. It's golf.
It's ironic because, when I was same with me when I was out there in LA for 2 years at 14, I ran a golf resort in Palm Springs. So my
I
chef was a
know.
big golfer. So every day at 3 o'clock, things, in the off season, because it was 110 degrees, we would
Right.
sneak out because we had a 27-hole golf course that was attached to the hotel. So we'd get on the course, go out there and play and have some cocktails. And the thing about it is, like, people think 110, 105, what? I'm like, it's a dry heat.
Yeah.
Nothing. If you're in Kansas City, 110, 105, you couldn't. If it was 100, you couldn't play golf
Right.
because you'd die. But really, in that part of the day, I mean, we'd be on the shade of the palm trees. We would do whatever. We would get out there, but it never affected us. It was
Yeah.
awesome. But
I
yeah,
remember
that was fun.
the first time. So growing up in South Florida in Tampa, I would be at it would be 92 degrees, but 80% humidity. So at the end of the first hole, it felt like you had taken a warm bath. But when
Yeah,
we first played, we'd gone out and stayed at the Marriott out in Palm Desert. And the first time we
right.
played it, I think it was 114 when we teed
Yeah,
off. So the
Desert
rule
Ridge.
was when we went there, I had to be next to the pool until 3, and then
Uh-huh.
after 3 we could play golf because Bobby luckily plays golf. But
Yep.
you're exactly right. Now the difference is the two things I found out real quick about desert golf is it is a dry heat, but when you
Yep.
stand up, if you're in a cart, your seat will turn to lava immediately if it's in the
Yeah.
sun, so you got to cover
Yep.
it. And don't touch any exposed metal, like the little
No.
push
And
thing for the water
no.
fountain or a handle for
Sometimes your clubs are even hot as shit. But I mean,
yeah,
like, and not drink, because if you drink, you're gonna be in trouble
right.
because of the dehydration. But
Yes.
I played in tournaments out there. They were awesome, but every other hole they have a shot. Right, take these shots. You're like, all right, fine. Then after about 3 holes after that, you're like, oh my god, I'm not feeling too good.
I
So
know.
you wouldn't. Yeah,
It's like, can someone put the tee in the ground and the ball in the tee for me?
I
And while you're
know.
doing that, swing the damn club.
Right. Yeah.
So
No.
so did you enjoy that part? Because so what you grew up, how many hotels did your family own?
It goes back to Glenwood Manor was the first. I think
Uh-huh.
my father owned back in. He bought it in God 62 or 3 when it's opened. I can't recall. I mean, he was part of the opening team and as a GM, and then he
Right.
bought it 10 years later from Glenn Dickinson, who had it. But I can't recall, to be honest.
So
Uh,
was there a big difference going to like I don't want to call it a family hotel because I don't think that's the right word, but
yeah,
going from what your family ran to going to a resort.
yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, back then it was like there's things I can say, like if you have listeners that know what the hotel industry worked in, like the word RevPAR, right? Revenue per available room.
Uh-huh.
That didn't exist back in the 70s, 80s, or 90s, right? So that didn't come on until the 2000s, and like I even talked to my father when I came back from LA about it. He's good to know what I was talking about. So basically, RevPAR is to break it down. If you have a 100-room hotel and you sell 75 rooms a night, they divide that ADR, average daily rate, by 100 rooms to get your RevPAR for the 25 rooms you don't sell.
Okay.
So basically, it's telling you what your hotel will produce on an evening on a Tuesday night that is going to do 60% versus the night you're going to do 100%. And for forecasting purposes and budget purposes, and obviously for total real numbers, I mean, it means a lot for hotels that have a high RevPAR, which obviously means that they're selling out, right? They're selling out every
Right.
night. If your RevPAR matches your ADR, then you're selling out every night. So it's
So the
evolved and
larger
changed.
that discrepancy, the more empty rooms.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. And you would think, and back in the day, the revenue management component was not in any of the hotel industry, was not involved back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and revenue management didn't come out until really 2000. So when I worked for Starwood and Ambridge, we had one on site. They called him a dorm, which was director of revenue management, and all they do all day is sit at their computer and they shop the competition and look at rates. And if you're an airport hotel, which I managed several airport hotels during my time, which is important because if a flight cancels and you get a flood of 50, 60, or 70 rooms coming in from canceled flights because of
Right.
weather, and then you have pilots and stewardesses and things like that. But they could change on a dime, right? So they got to
Right.
be on top of it to change rates, because if there's an influx or a vacuum, it can cost you thousands and thousands of dollars because if you're not on top of it. So they reduce rates, or they would rather increase rates depending on what's going on in the market. They would do it very quickly. So there were several times that we had opportunities to close in a lot of business in certain times and days. And I mean, shit, those dorms would lose their jobs because they didn't do it right.
Right.
Owners got pissed. But it's definitely an art for sure.
It is. So
Yeah.
you enjoyed. What was the best part about being with a resort hotel for you?
That 2 years, for me, because I love golf and I played golf before my recent body breakdowns. But the fact that I was able to work at golf resort in Palm Springs, and I was there pre-renovation. It used to be the Doral Desert Princess in Palm Springs, and we converted to a DoubleTree with Ambridge. So
Uh-huh.
it was a 200 290. I think it was 290 rooms, had 25,000 square feet of meeting space, the spa, the golf course, 27 holes. It was awesome, but it was a really rundown hotel. It had great bones, but it was a piece of shit. They hadn't put money back into it in years, so they finally had new ownership buy it for pennies on the dollar, which is great. Owners of people in the hotel industry pick hotels, distressed properties, and they pay nothing for them, and they can turn them around and look like rock stars, which that was the case. That was the situation here at this hotel in this market. So Ambridge Hospitality, they had an owner. We managed it for them. Decided to
So you
convert
were
it to
there both pre-renovation and then
yeah,
during the renovation. Okay.
yeah. So I oversaw the renovation, which I'd done. God, I don't know, 7 or 8 times in my career, and I've opened hotels from the ground up. But for me, it's probably the most satisfying to when you go through, you take a piece of shit to a piece of gold, right? It's pretty
Right.
phenomenal. Say like, wow, I mean, the structure's sound, it's concrete, but you've add texture to it, and you change it, and you can see NOI at the end of it. You're like, wow, you went from a $55 ADR to $175. It's crazy to think, like,
Yeah.
and they do it cost per key, right? So you hear stories about the W in Manhattan sold for $1 million a key. You're like, what does that mean? Well, if it's 200 rooms, it sold for $200 million,
Okay.
and that means that's what they average. The revenue for the hotel is basically it's kind of a thumbprint to tell you, hey, or blueprint, not thumbprint. I'm not going to jail. Blueprint to tell you that blueprint to tell you kind of where to follow. What's the road? Or, right. This is what we should hit, and those hotels make that kind of money. I mean, like in LA, Kansas City, Des Moines, Iowa, Omaha, Nebraska, middle of the Midwest hotels are built to lose money in F&B. Well, in Los Angeles, it's totally different, right? The hotels there make money in F&B. I mean, they have these lavish pool parties. They have, one
Right.
of our
And that's
hotels.
food and beverage,
Yeah, yeah,
correct? Okay.
right. Food and
Okay.
beverage, yeah. So, I mean, you would have these lavish pool parties, and we had a hotel in La Jolla that was crushing it with F&B. The
Right.
bar at the top of the hotel was awesome. We had another hotel in San Diego that was, they hired, what's the DJ? Not Marshmallow. What's the other guy? It's real famous. Shit.
I am not
Been
a
around.
DJ type guy.
Anyway, so this DJ was talking to the guy who was my boss, who oversaw. He met with me at the property. We were talking. He's like, okay, you're gonna get it's one name. Anyway, I forgot it. But this guy he commanded like he got like $8,000 a minute. It was something stupid like
I
that.
have
And I'm
heard
like,
it, and I don't fucking
yeah,
understand that. When
yeah,
they said, "Oh, a DJ made 36 million last year," and I'm like,
yeah, yeah,
"What?" I don't
yeah,
understand that.
yeah. It's what the fuck was his name?
But yeah,
Um,
so
anyway,
you're saying like the hotels here in the Midwest, they offer food and beverage so that someone has food and beverage on
exactly.
site,
So
but it's
yeah,
losing money because it's just there out of a necessity. Not, but on the
exactly.
West
It's
Coast, you
amenity.
actually treated this as a feature. This is a
Oh yeah.
prominent feature of our hotel.
It basically was like when I worked for W and a loft Starwood, it was like their concept was basically you have a hip restaurant and a bar with a hotel connected. Vice versa would back in the day you have a hotel and the amenity is the F&B. But
Right.
their point was, hey, we're going to draw people to the hotel, and obviously the asset will be exposed based on the fact they're coming to see hang out at the bar with Leonardo DiCaprio at the top of the hotel on the patio, and they're going to be able to see the hotel from there. And it was an odd approach for me because I'm like, hey, you got to sell the asset, right? You don't sell the
Right.
sausage, you got to sell the sizzle. I'm like, I don't really understand that, but it worked. I mean, it truly, you go on a Monday night or an afternoon and you go out to the pool at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel and it's fucking packed. They're all laying out. You got drinks, cocktail, and that day in that bar, particular Tuesday or whatever I said, Monday, whatever it was, midweek, they do fucking 10 grand. And you're like, God damn, holy
Right.
shit. And you realize that you can pump out, you can do a lot of money in F&B there and actually make them hurt because the prices are stupid, right? They're paying, it's kind of like when you go to Vegas, right? You get bottle service for
Yeah.
$2,500, and you pay $700 for a bottle of Absolute vodka you can buy for $30 at the liquor store.
Right.
Like, do we got a hand job with that, or what? Why is it so expensive?
Right.
I don't understand. I mean, so does it come with a bottle of X, or So it's
And
really,
that's what's crazy is that people will do that. I
oh, yeah,
mean,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, and to a lot of people, that's just going out.
Hmm. Yeah. So, but from a kid from the Midwest, my eyes were wide open. Like, really, you can capitalize and make this kind of money, people. So, I mean, we obviously followed that path in the hotels we had out there, and it was ridiculous. I mean,
Did you ever feel like guilty? Sometimes I feel guilty about if there's a certain price attached to something. Like I feel, even though I know that I'm worth it or whether, I feel guilty attaching a price. Did you ever feel
yeah,
guilty having, a bottle service that, just like you said, a 700 bottle that they could go to the liquor store and buy for
yeah.
30?
Well, I mean, in
And did
the
that
affluent,
change for you?
yeah, but the affluent people that would come to the hotels or nightclubs that we managed would, they walked in the door knowing that, right?
Right,
So I didn't feel sorry for them. I kind of felt sorry for the people that couldn't partake in something like that because they didn't make that kind of money. But
right.
that was average in LA, man. I mean, that was when I first moved there. I had a Toyota Camry, and I had to get an S550. Well, not had to, but I looked at one, found it. It was awesome, but every time I pulled the stoplight, I looked to the left, there's a Lamborghini, looked to the right, there's a Bentley, and I'm like, I'm driving a fucking Camry. I need to step up my game.
Right.
So I just did that to be average,
Yeah.
and just average in LA. And I mean, it's always about keeping up with the Joneses, and it got to me after a while. I mean, that's frankly after my divorce. The other thing was one of the reasons I wanted to get the hell out of there because I was sick of. I mean, I was based at LAX. My base hotel that I oversaw was 300 rooms at LAX Custom Hotel, and being a VP for Marriott at that time, and I flew out, would go either, I had 17 hotels from Sacramento down to La Jolla that I overseen and traveled. And so I would either fly or drive, depending, but my base hotel that I managed and also flew out of was at LAX. But the stupidity of money and the wealth that you see, and like my hotel there in Lincoln Boulevard was less than a mile from Marina Del Rey, right? So I'd go
Uh-huh.
down there for lunch and sit there and just watch, and it's just like it's crazy. I mean, the stupid, and the sad thing is that I think the stat when I moved there in 2005 was that 77% of the people in California, and then Los Angeles proper, can't afford to rent, can't afford to own a home, so they rent. And it conversely, it was different. It was 77% of the people in the Midwest own homes
Right.
and don't rent. It
Yeah.
was just like, it was crazy when I went there. I mean, I know what I spent. I spent over $1 million in 14 years to live in California and have nothing to
To
show
show
for it.
for it. Yeah.
It rented every time. I mean, we first moved out there and looked at a house in Irvine, in Orange County. We were going to move. My wife and I at that time. She was a teacher, and I had two young daughters of 7 and 4. And we looked around, and my wife did the homework on. My hotel was in San Pedro, which was really right outside of. It's a port city. It's a very blue collar town. It's right outside of Long Beach, and I was moved there. That was my first job there. My company, which moved me there from Kansas City before I managed the Wyndham here at Overland Park at 107th and Metcalf, which is now was bulldozed 15 years ago
Oh
now.
yeah.
It's
I
something
remember
else.
that
The whole
one.
quarter's changed. Yeah. So that was my first hotel at Ambridge for 2 years. Then they moved me to LA to go through. And again, it was another distressed property. It was a marina hotel that had 300 boat slips. It was beautiful. I mean, right on the water. But it was called the Marina Hotel. It was really bad. It was a piece of shit. They didn't put any money back into it, the owners. So we had new owners that bought it. We want to reflag it a DoubleTree. We want you to take it over. And I went through project management, hired the construction company, did all that, went through the renovation. It was about $10 million and took about 9 months. But so the problem was in that area, the schools were horrific. And they are in LA. They are very bad. And I still,
Right.
to this day, my son is still there. He's 10 years old. So he'll be 10. No, I'm sorry. He'll be 13 this summer. But the school that he is in now is it's in Rancho Palos Verdes, so which is in the northern tip of San Pedro. So it's great. It's nice. Trump National Golf Course is in Palos Verdes above it. So it's very weird how you go. It's kind of like you can't say you drive downtown and you go two or three seats over. You're like, shit, should never went
Right.
over here. But same thing in California. I mean, where I lived in the house that I rented, I mean, I had spray paint. People sprayed tagging the fence across my house. I was paying $4,000 a month rent.
Yeah.
for an 1,800 square foot house in Redondo Beach. I mean, it's nuts. I mean, it's just crazy, crazy, crazy. And you had homeless people in the drive-through of the McDonald's. My son would drive through, and he's like, "Daddy, why is that guy there?" I'm like, buddy, he's got issues. And one day the guy, we go through the drive to the McDonald's right there on PCH, and the guy was begging for food, and I'm like, "Hey man, here's some fries." He's like, "Do you think I'm sick of fries by now?" And he just got in my car. I'm like, "What the fuck? Are you shitting me?" So the next time
Yeah.
I came to drive through, I told the lady, I said, "Do you think you have a homeless guy out there panhandling for food when you come at the end of the drive through?" She's like, "Oh yeah, that's Fred." I'm like, "Do your owners know there's Freds out there?" She's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Okay, well, I'll never come back here again." So,
And I'm
um,
sure that we have that in Kansas City.
yeah.
I know that we do, but
hmm
it's weird. I say it all
Yeah,
the
but here,
time on
but
this.
here's the deal, Ronnie. But you have to drive from where I live and where you live 45 minutes to interact and see that. In LA,
Right.
you go one street over, you go from wealthy to dirt poor. I mean, same in Beverly Hills. My buddy Jason, I was talking about, he lived in Beverly Hills, he lived in the Hollywood Hills. And then, but we drive away and we're like, you see gangbangers. I mean, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
LA is probably the most unusual diverse city that I've ever seen. We talk about, I mean, as far as, I mean, there's no middle class there. You're either wealthy or
We're
you're
not.
poor.
Yeah.
That's it. And either you're making ends meet but there's no middle class. It doesn't exist. So, and some of the places that you could afford to live and buy a house, you wouldn't. I mean, there were houses there when I first moved in 2005, $500,000. There was a house that was close to the hotel, but like you hear gunshots at night. I mean, it
Right.
was like if you're paying $500,000, I mean, $500,000 here is a lot, right?
Yeah.
That's a crack house in California, in LA.
Well,
Yeah.
it was funny. I was looking or I was reading something about apartments and how the rent was going up in places.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we still live. We used to live outside of DeSoto, which is like a
hmm
rural town here, and then we moved back into Overland Park, and we're in an apartment, and we got a
Yep.
great deal. But I was reading, and it wasn't in Kansas City, but someone was like, um, something about their apartment, and they go, "Well, I guess for $2,500 a month, we're not seeing as many cockroaches as we used to." And I'm like thinking, you shouldn't be
Yeah.
seeing any cockroach. I mean, that's
I
just
know.
how I would be,
Yeah.
man, I know
Yeah.
just how sheltered and what a diva I am. And my
Yeah.
wife tells me it all the time, but yeah, that is
It's
crazy.
crazy.
So
Yeah.
let
It's
me ask you
nuts.
this. I watched something, I don't remember if it was something on Vice or something on Soft White Underbelly on YouTube, but there was something I
Mhm.
saw that it was about someone that worked in high-end hotels, and they were talking about people that spent a ton of money and like kind of their behavior. Was
Yeah.
that, well, first of all, what was the most expensive room that you ever had at one of your properties? Like a night?
Oh, I want to say the presidential suite at our hotel in La Jolla was 4 grand a night.
Wow.
It was in essence, it was 2 rooms.
No
About
cockroaches.
no,
Okay.
no, it didn't have any. No,
Okay.
no.
So that's where you have to
Overlooked the
get
ocean.
$4,000 a night gets you no
Yep,
cockroaches.
yep, yep. Absolutely.
So
But you've been there, right? I mean, it's now you've got San Pedro, where we were when the hotel flipped over. I mean, or the revenues were stupid crazy after that hotel was converted. But before, very blight area, very depressed economy. I mean, they had homeless people living in dog houses, and the mayor approved it down on Main Street. I'm like, what the fuck is this guy doing? I
yeah,
mean, and the homeless problem, God bless him. I feel sorry for him. It's just since I've left, I've been back to see my son couple of times. Obviously, that's another story. But each time I've gone, it's just like it's worse and worse. And now
yeah.
since COVID happened, it's the homeless population is times three, and it's the only good thing about LA was the weather. I'll be honest. I mean, it was either 72 we went from 67 to 78 every day where I lived, and never deviated. Never had any shorts in my wardrobe or flip flops. But you come
It
back
is
to
nice
reality in
knowing that.
Kansas City.
That's one
Yeah,
thing I
but I
miss
mean, like,
about Tampa.
yeah, exactly, right. But I mean, like, it's not livable, right? So you come out to Kansas City, you're like, God
Yeah.
damn, man, for $500,000, I can live like a king. But yeah, there's winter, there's snow, there's rain, there's humidity is excessive. I mean, but it's hot everywhere in the summer except for California, right?
Yeah.
So,
Uh,
but yeah, that's we don't miss the traffic. Like I said, I lived in Redondo, about 12 miles away from my hotel or less than that from LAX, that would take me 45 minutes to an hour to drive
See,
back.
and there are so many things that the
Yeah.
weather, like you say, would be the only draw. Because I have a feeling like if people want to talk about homelessness with me, I always say I'm not a good person to talk to it about because
Hmm.
I'm compassionate, but I haven't experienced. I've seen a lot of people. My brother-in-law lives in Austin, and we've seen some
Oh
interviews
yeah.
and stuff down there that they're having the issues. And these people that used to be very, very compassionate about, homelessness and all this, once someone's
Yeah.
shitting on your sidewalk every single
Yeah.
morning. And so I haven't had that experience. So I tell people,
Yeah.
I'm compassionate for everyone, but I have no idea because I have not experienced that in any way,
Yeah.
shape, or form.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're leaving California and we're coming back to Kansas City. So did you come back
Yes.
to Kansas City uh, with the hotel industry?
No. So what I did was like I said, getting a divorce was final by the end of 2017, but I left and moved back here. I think I landed here late September of 17, just because the owners that I had worked for had sold the hotel that I was based out of, and they were going to furlough me until they found me another property. They were, to say cheap would be an understatement. So they wouldn't keep me on the payroll until they found another hotel, which ironically happened about a month, 45 days after I left. They landed another hotel in Anaheim at Disneyland. So they could have kept me on the payroll for 45 days and
Right.
just hand me
And they
those
kept you.
hotels.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they didn't. So I didn't. I spent 4 years with these guys. I'm like, that's enough. I don't care about the title or what I'm doing. But I wanted to, I'm like, I can do what I do anywhere. I can be in Portland, Kansas City, Chicago, LA, Boston, New York. Doesn't matter. I can run hotels in Kansas City and actually get paid good money and live like a king and normally. And so that was a plan. I formed a consulting company for hotels and restaurants back in 2015. Reason being is one of the owners I worked for was Chinese, and they have more money than God, but they don't know how to run a hotel more so than a 10-year-old knows how to run a popsicle stand in the middle of
Right.
July. So they hired me, and I set up. It was a brand new Sheraton in Anaheim that I was hired to be the GM of 285 rooms with 15,000 square feet of meeting space and two restaurants and a bar. It was we were on the Disney plan, so it was 24/7 Disneyland. We had a bus shuttle that took these people to Disney, and it was a nice hotel. I mean, he spent like $165 or 165 grand on like imported Italian marble alone for
Right.
the bathrooms. So this guy, invested way too much money. He was top heavy, didn't know what he's doing, but he liked being the big guy in town, right? He
Right.
liked being the fact that, hey, I'm Ronnie, I own this hotel. And he had hotels in different parts of California. This was, one of 15 that he had that he managed. So, but it was, I started the hotel. He was running 40% at a rate of like $95 for a brand new Sheraton. I'm like, are you kidding me? So by the time I left him, he was up over $100 and 90% because he wasn't participating in all the plan, all of the Disney packages and
Right.
doing things. And so I rekeyed the rates and did all this kind of stuff to help him get there. And that was, I left. But the reason I brought it up was because of what did I bring up? I'm talking about Anaheim, or no? What were we talking about?
Talking
Oh,
about coming
Chinese.
here.
So
Yeah.
so he entered. So I went to one of his Chinese businessmen luncheons, and he introduced me to several other Chinese hotel owners that barely spoke English and didn't know anything about the hotels, and wanted to hire me to be their hey, Rick, can you write a marketing plan? Can you do a budget for me? Can you do a payroll analysis? Can you labor analysis? Can you do this? Food costs? I'm like, sure.
Right.
So I do it on the side. They would pay me, and so that's why I'm like, well, shit. So I started forming. They would pay me 10 grand for a budget. They would pay me 3 grand for a sales and marketing plan. They'd pay me, and so I formed a Ross Consultants back in 2015 and was doing it on the side while I was working down there as well because it was easy for me. It was
Right.
like I can do this during the day while I'm working, and nobody would know the difference. So I had that, and I had, when I came back to Kansas City, I didn't have anything lined up. But I talked to a lot of people, and they gave me some leads for hotel consultant jobs in Kansas City. And I worked with a gentleman that opened a couple of hotels at KCI. Coincidentally, it was the same time I came back, so I was with him for 6 months, then worked for another guy for 9 months, and I was hired as a VP for another hotel management company here in Kansas City who had properties in North and East Carolina, and then in Kansas City at about 15 that I was was the VP of ops for him on the Kansas side, and he had another VP of ops on the East Coast. over those hotels. So, but he and I really didn't get along, butted heads, and in the summer of 19 decided to break away. I said had time to do my own thing, didn't know what that thing was, but it ended up that my wife and I had met in the spring of 18, got married in Christmas of 18, very fast, head over heels, romance, all that stuff. And her background is fashion. She used to be a buyer for Halls, so it's Louis Vuitton, this Gucci, Prada, purses, shoes, all that shit. And then my experience came in with the hotels, with food and beverage, that part of it. So the idea came up to do a food. I'd owned a restaurant before, 25 years ago, and I never want to do that again. I mean, I was married to it 2 years of my life that I spent, open 7 days a week. Now, but I'd done it smart, and I would open 5 days a week or 6, and had one day with my family or 2. But restaurateurs don't do that, and they end up in divorce, which is what happened to me in my first marriage. So, but
so you all decided together then?
Yeah, it was collaborations, So you're like, well, how can we make this work? I'm like, I kind of saw something here. I'm like, this could be a sexy ad, because my wife's beautiful, and I think I can make this work. It was kind of the Hooters thing, right? Like you're drawn to it. Sex sells. It always has. It always will. You're drawn to it, and then all of a sudden you walk in, you get the wings. You're like, I can't say this to be honest, because I don't know if they're worth a shit anymore, but they were good then, right? So you get somebody comes in like, wait, it's not a gimmick. This is actually good food, right? I'll come back. So that was kind of the same concept, right? So reel them in, and then once we land them, they would come back, and that was the plan for us, to use that, the sex appeal and the gourmet burger, because it was her background, designer cuisine, and my background was operations in food and beverage and hotels. So it seemed like a perfect match. And launched the company in January 2020. After, like I said,
because that is a perfect time. If anyone has a time machine and wants to go back and start a company, January of 2020 would be an ideal landing spot.
You want to dump a bunch of money into something, walk away with your head up high. I'm going to do my own thing. You couldn't have picked a better time to do it than January 2020.
I'm my own man.
Yes, because a month and a half later, good old COVID-19 hits, which back in the annals, if I lived to see what happens, but you couldn't have asked for a worse time to start a new venture, a new company, a new anything. It was horrific. It was, started out doing pretty well. We went to a lot of corporate business. We go up and feed, Black and Beach. And then, 3 weeks later, they all were gone. They sent them home. So we're like, okay, well, that segment of our business is gone. Started doing schools, same thing. Schools shut down. Everybody sent home. We're like, okay. And then all the edict immediately, there's no weddings, no nothing, no parties of 10 or more. So we're like, the catering part was like 70% of my budget. So I'm like, fuck, okay. And we had deposits down for events that we had to get back, and it was just a fucking disaster. And I just couldn't think. I'm like, did I really? But the thing is that had I stayed in the hotel industry at that time, I would have lost my job within months. A lot of my peers, GMs and VPs were gone within 6 months. Some of their owners just closed their hotels, closed them, didn't furlough employees, closed them, done, out.
Yeah. Now let me stop real quick as we're getting into Tina's Trucks, because I wanted to ask how much were you into cooking beforehand? Because the stuff you make is amazing. Like because I'm gonna link the website when this is posted so that people can see. It is amazing. It's amazing cuisine, and I will tell you this also, that you're very visible. Our youngest child was somewhere, and they called me and they said, hey, I just saw Tina's truck. I don't remember where it was. It's been within the last week or so that they told me that. But so you're very visible as well. But one of the things that I do remember is when we ran into each other in Tampa, which was a crazy story, because I was there. We didn't know we were going to be there. So we know each other from Kansas City. My hometown is Tampa. We'll get to why you were there in just a second, but the only place in Tampa at the time that was very Irish, and we were there over St. Patrick's Day, was Bennigan's, which I don't even know if those are still around. So my cousin Jean, who I'm with, at some point, because there's just, I don't know, hundreds, if not 1,000 people under this gigantic tent, goes, oh, there's so-and-so from high school. And I looked and I was like, no, that doesn't look anything like, and it didn't. It didn't look any. And then later he goes, dude, I just saw Rick Ross. And I'm like, you were so fucking trash. And right as that came out of my mouth, I think you came up behind me and slapped me on the shoulders or something. So then we ran each other, and you were in the Tampa area. I think I remember this right. I think it was for your brother.
Yeah.
So you were down there with your brother, and what was your brother doing at that time?
He was still is. He does a media market media company. So he previously was like Sony and AMC. These guys were his biggest clients. So what they did was they would manufacture the popcorn tubs that had the Superman logo and emblaze or whatever. What's the word? Embossed or around it, and the cups and everything. So that's what he did and sold. The media for that.
Now, hold on. I was thinking that one of your brothers was at spring training with the Yankees.
Yeah, that was him. Yeah.
Okay, that's still him. Okay, because the reason I caught on to I was thinking about this story and tying it into food is you all had a place out on Clearwater Beach, and John and I came out there, and I think your mom had just fed the entire team or something.
Yeah.
And you're like, you need to come up. We have leftovers, and it was fucking amazing.
Yeah.
And so that's why I wondered how much of that you took on.
Oh yeah, the passion of when you're Italian, you're born into that, right? So my mother, I think when I was out of the womb, gave me a cookbook that was 2 inches thick. So it was, I was raised in a house where my mother was always with 6 kids, 2 and all of her friends, and you can imagine the house was. You've been there. I mean, you came over, it was nuts, and there's a zoo, and my mother always felt like she had to feed everybody, and most Italian mothers do, but that's just the way it was. So
I just remember that out of the, so many days are just gone, and you'll never recall anything. But that is one of those moments that, and I think it was tied in because I tell this story, and I think that it was you, me, and Jean sitting next to the Adams Mark pool. Yeah. Waiting to go into a bar, which was in the basement, and these 3 girls walked in, and so this is the late '80s. So heckling women. Whatever you want to think about it now, it was fine back then by my standards. So we heckled some girls, and then we went in, and I didn't know those same girls. I went to ask to dance, and she was very rude. And I think I go, would you like to dance? And she goes, you said something to me outside or something. And I was like, oh, you misunderstood me. I said you look fat in those pants.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that is still to this day the only day I've ever had. So that was all tied in. That bar scene. So Bennigan's the bar scene and your mom's cooking.
Yeah.
That would be a great movie.
That line is fucking hilarious. And I've told that story a million times. People are like, they laugh their ass off because it's like the best revenge on somebody. Like, no. Oh, what do you mean? No, I didn't. What do you think?
Well, because I was shaken. I was like, she can't get the last word. No.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the best way to end it. It's like, no, I didn't ask you. I asked to say you look fat in those pants.
And I'm not even sure she was wearing pants, but it was probably just perfect. So... So okay, so did your dad do any cooking, or was it only your mom?
My father liked to toil. His deal was barbecue.
Okay,
we always knew when he did ribs.
And in the Midwest, that's pretty normal that women will do a lot of the cooking, but then when it comes to the smoker or the grill, the men take it over.
Yeah, but I mean, like the Italians would every Sunday, you'd have a maiglia, which is the Italian tank top, which was stained with the pasta sauce, and be out there at the grill. And Italians did sausage. We were doing Italian sausage on the grill, and smokers didn't exist back then, so they didn't smoke any meat. They would just cooked them. But Sundays was a big day. It was always that was our family dinner day, and most Italians still do that. And obviously now that we've grown and split up, we don't do it anymore. But obviously the family was number one at that point in time, and we always knew we were going to be on Sunday night at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, and I think it was summertime or not, and we'd be at the pool and we'd have a cookout. But to answer your question, I mean, my mother spearheaded the interest I had in cooking, and to this
so did
day,
did that always follow you even when you were in the restaurant? I mean, when you were in the hotel industry, did you all, was it like when I get home, I am literally trying to find the easiest thing that I can make that I will eat. So, but I do know some people that go home and then they're like, oh, last night I made this aioli sauce with blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't even understand the words coming out of your mouth right now.
Yeah.
So
Right.
were you somewhere in between those two, or were you probably more the I want to make something not a hot dog?
No, I mean, the fact of the matter is that in my life and what I've done and the hours I put in, I mean, shit, in the hotel industry, Rodney, I was working, which is normal for me, but I tell the story, people look at me aghast, but I like, I would work 10, 12 hours a day. That was normal. And I'd work 6 on a Saturday,
Yeah.
I'd do a half day on a Saturday. And Sunday was off, but or maybe it was Sunday because we had a heavy arrival that day, and we had a group in or something. So I switched Sunday for Saturday, but
Right.
it was all I never not worked 6 days a week. So so by the time I got home, it was like I'm baked, I'm done, I can't, So either you had leftovers from a dinner you had 2 nights ago, or you were gonna cook something else. But for me, it was the recipe book my mother left me, and she made one for all of us, all 6 of her kids. I think 2 years before she died. Uh, and it's a 3-inch book, but it's got Italian food. It's got everything she ever made for us, step by step, which is awesome because I've used it to this day and I still do for a lot of the items that we make on the truck. And I do straight. Sometimes we do straight Italian, which people will request and ask us, but
Right.
I never do it mixed in with like my mother's meatball sandwich is amazing, and I did it we did Treads and Threads last year. Did meatball sandwiches for them. It was a special deal. They asked for them, so we did them. But it's very laborious. It's very intense to do that many. I had to make 1,000 meatballs to make these sandwiches. So it was very intense, but it was awesome. Everybody loved it. It was great food. But as far as doing that
Is
on a
that
day-to-day
something that
basis,
you've shared with your kids at all? The
yeah,
love of cooking?
yeah, it
See
is.
that
I mean,
that's
they enjoy
awesome.
it.
Like I think that the reason my mom didn't want me in the kitchen was I think there was one fucking time I did not secure the lid on the blender when I was making a milkshake or something, and then I wasn't allowed in the kitchen much after that. So, but
Yep,
I
yep,
never had that experience because I think I would appreciate food maybe a little bit more, even if I have a very narrow palette of what I like. So
yeah,
even if that didn't expand, just me being more comfortable around the food. I mean, and I don't know. That's something that my wife and I always talk about is whether it doesn't matter. I just have issues with food in general,
yeah.
but I
Right.
wish I didn't, and I wonder if I would have been more involved in the cooking and the making and being able to appreciate food from that aspect because I've
Yeah.
never really been able to do that. And it sounds like your parents included you, especially your mom. I mean, giving you all a cookbook. My mom would
Yeah. I mean,
never
it
think about giving
was.
me a cookbook.
Yeah, it was cool. It was awesome. It's something I hold near and dear to my heart to this day. But yeah, I mean, it was one of the reasons I was 300 pounds too at the time. So God bless her. Which kind of changed the course of my life. As I look back and think of how it was and what it is today. It's like, you go from when I lost my weight, you knew me. I don't know if you
Yeah.
knew me back. Yeah. Okay. So I went through that phase where, I would come home from school starting at 14, 13, 15, whatever it was, and eat a bag of Oreos and then chips and sit on my ass, do nothing. So one day I woke up and I was 230 pounds, or 250 pounds at age 16. My mom was, had her wits in because I'd been heavy my entire life. My brother, they were making fun of me, picking on me as usual. And she finally said, "Hey, if you think you can do it, go ahead, try it." So she got in a fight with my oldest brother, Butch, and he put me on this diet. Well, at that time, the athletic club of Overland Park had just opened.
Right.
So we got where we lived at 103rd Metcalf was very close. So he got a membership and he's like, "Yeah, I'll get it off." And so he started taking me to the gym and put a weightlifting program and different exercises, whether it was squats, lifting, bench, and then there was cardio involved in that as well, walking the treadmill, running, eventually things like that. But in 9 months, I lost 108 pounds, which was like a Backstreet Boy back then.
Right.
So, and that really changed my life. I mean, people that I would see from high school didn't know me, didn't recognize me. They're like, "Who?" And I never didn't really have an active dating life until at the end of that loss. I weighed 175 versus 298 or what was it, 112 pounds. Yeah. So it's like, again, losing a body, but my dating life like flipped on a dime. And I was like,
Right.
I'm like, oh, hey, whoa, this girl's, wow. Oh, shit. I was 18 and a half or almost 19 years old when that happened. And
And here's the weird thing because I've known you and I knew you back then and stuff.
then,
I think what the change was your confidence. Because
oh, yeah.
you I mean you were always I mean we haven't talked in forever, and here we are an
Yeah.
hour in, and you're like, how long are we going to talk? So, I mean, you're in, and I do think that when people, make a dramatic change like that, especially something that's so dramatic and good for them, it gives you that confidence because I don't think anything changed besides your confidence in there, because you've always been, I don't know. I guess
Yeah.
like me, you, and I guess I remember you inviting me to hang out with you and Tommy Morris on at least one
Yeah.
occasion. So you must be a pretty good guy.
Yeah, but I mean, like, you're right. The confidence, you're going from somebody who's an introvert at 300 pounds, and my whole life I was a class clown because I wanted to make friends,
Right.
and you're trying to do it some way, right? And then the only reason I was an athlete and played football at Rockers was because nobody could move me, right, at 300 pounds. So I was the line, right? So it was like impossible, then when the weight came off, I became, different. Like I had like confidence that I didn't have before. You're right, it was different. I was
Yeah.
like, the dating thing was crazy. Like never having a date, never going out with somebody to all of a sudden like, wait, how do I stop this?
Right.
How do I turn it off? How do I,
How do I add more days to the week?
Yeah, exactly.
Whichever way you want to look at it.
Yeah, it reminded me of why, I moved back from LA in 17, and I was on like, I don't know, 2 or 3 different dating apps, and it was like a fucking job, right? It was
Right.
like, it was a job in itself. When I had another job, I'm like, how do I balance all this? And I finally got sick, after 3 or 4, 5 dates a week, whatever it was I was doing, trying to find somebody to be compatible with me. I did that for a year, and it was like, oh my God, I look back, it was just like, it was working. I finally found Christina, my wife now, who we collect similar backgrounds. Everything was similar. We had a lot of things in common.
So how did you meet?
We met on Match.com,
Ah.
actually. So, and then a friend of my sister had known of her through another friend that was a mutual friend, told me about her, and so we met, started dating, and like really, literally within 90 days, I'm like, okay, I'm done. I'm gonna get married. She's like, yeah, and we got engaged in September of 18, started dating in early April of 18, and got married December 29th or December 27th of 18. So,
See, and
it was very fast.
and
But
I
it was
think
like,
that when you know,
yeah, exactly. That's the thing. I was at my age. I'm like, I'm 50. Well, how old was I at that time? Let me see. I was 40. I turned 50 in
You said 18, so it would have been almost like 4.5 years
Yeah.
ago. So 49
Yes,
years. Yeah.
exactly. So I was, and I'm like, I don't want to do this deal. And, you wake up with somebody else every day, and you're
Right.
like sneaking out, or she's sneaking out of your place, and it's just awkward and weird. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I'm done. And in the dating pool, it's not like I'm in LA. I'm in Kansas City. So you
Right.
can imagine what the comparison, because I was divorced, I was doing through my divorce in LA. I was living in one of my hotels, my base hotel there at LAX, for about 9 months before I moved back to Kansas City. And I was doing it there, dating there. I was saying
Right.
things like, oh my God, I can't do that. I can't. And I don't know why I did it. I mean, I could have stayed in the hotel and done nothing. I could have went out and I could have saw movies, but I was like, I don't know. It was like prevent. I don't know what in my mind made me do it so much, but I did.
Right.
When I came back, I'm like, I don't want to do this. Keep doing this. I can't. And so finally, she was at the same place in her life, because she's like, the dating pool here in Kansas City's fucking horrific, and I've met so many losers, and I don't want to do this anymore. And we really connected, and next thing I moved in to her house in September, October, after I proposed, and got married in December, and roll into the next chapter, which is the truck and the catering company, and nothing's been the same since. But I mean, I truly believe, and the reason we started this in the first place was to franchise it, right? It was
Right.
to roll out Tina's trucks, and to do, and again, her name's Christina, so everybody called her Tina, so that made sense, and it was catchy and great.
Right.
It's a great name.
Great alliteration. So
Yeah, so we did this, and the fact was that, based on my age and experience, was that I knew I couldn't sustain this physically. I
Right.
said, we'll do this for the first 8 months to 9 months to a year, get the recipes turnkey, get everything done. We'll franchise. I built the franchise, the FLA, based on a hotel franchise model, which is what I'd known my entire life. So
right.
as an owner, you want to come in, you want to be a Tina's Trucks franchisee, great. You pay me 3.5% of gross food and beverage revenue. You pay me, or we give you a sales and marketing spiff, meaning that, we supply you with the applications, depending on your market, to reach the right people that would hire you, obviously based on due
Right.
diligence and what we've done in the background. You buy your own truck. I mean, I'm not going to pay for your truck. You pay me $100,000. It's going to get you 10 years with my franchise. If you want two or more, we get a breakdown on the price and the years, all that stuff. Had the legal stuff done, ready to roll. My attorney had everything turnkey done, and 2.5 months, really 2 months into it, COVID hits.
Right.
And we're like, well, that's off the table now because nobody had any money. Nobody wanted to, what people
Right.
that did have money were very cautious, didn't want to do any new ventures, didn't know what was going on. I mean, it was, you remember, shit, people that was the end of the fucking world. I mean,
Yes,
like
they
nobody
did.
knew what was going on. I mean, so we started out doing, we'd go to a public place and it was awkward. Like people were standing 10 feet apart with masks and shit. They're like, did you touch the change with, I'm like, fuck, man, it was just awkward, like trying to meander. And I felt for my hotel brethren, people, everybody I knew that was in the hotel business, because I'm like, everything they knew had to start over. I mean, like
Right.
from checking in to entering the room to how clean it was and to all the
Every
things.
every other room filled or something like
Yeah.
that.
Oh, it was horrible. It was like 9/11. They had more cancellations than reservations.
Yeah.
It was horrible. So anytime something happens in American history like that, as 9/11 or these horrific terrorist attacks, it obviously has effect on tourism and hotels, and so obviously it took a hit, and same thing for us. I mean, and everybody that started, we we have a lot of connections and friends now in the industry here in Kansas City, and those people have been doing it longer than us, and they weathered the storm through COVID, but they were doing it like good friends of us that own the melt truck here in Kansas City. They do grilled cheese. It's really good, and they do a lot of different other mac and cheese and things like that. So they're very popular. But they were doing about a year and a half
Right.
before us, like when COVID hit. So they were talking about how they weathered through. Last night we had dinner with them actually, and they told us how they weathered through the storm on their end and what they did and how they survived. And all I knew was that what I started and what the intention was, it never got to that point. So, my attorney, as we've gone through this business model now, we've completed year 3, we're starting year 4 now, this year in 2023, and based on what we've learned and seen through the last 3 years and the growth we've had, we anticipate that we'll be ready to franchise in a year. So we took a step back,
Right.
lost 4 years, but I think we're back to the starting point now, where we have exposure, where we have a reputation now, where we have things that, we've been asked to do certain events that a lot of other people have not been invited to, based on the experience we had with certain people. I mean, we've done a lot of big events and great exposure. We're doing.
And I would assume that something like that, word of mouth, is going to, someone's going to overhear someone else talking about you catering or your truck or
Right.
something, and that's going to click them next time that their office or whatever. And I was also going to mention a couple of things. That one, I would think that when you're going into the franchise mode here, that your diligence and your ability to make it through starting in January of 2020 and still come out on this end, even though it's slowed your progress, I think that will be a big positive that people will see.
Yeah.
Because that's just amazing. And the other thing I was going to mention, because what you're doing is every event that you're doing is like a community type event, whether it's a business or a
Yeah.
group or whatever. So everyone's getting together, and you couldn't ask for a worse thing when we were trying to figure out COVID. I mean, I think there were a lot of wrong things that got done. I think if it ever happens again, we'll be much smarter about it, I hope. But I mean, you couldn't ask for, because, even a restaurant, you're at separate tables, and they could have put up plexiglass. But I mean, you're literally telling people, we need you to be here, and you're going to stand right next to each other too, by the way.
Right. I know.
So
Yeah, which would be an awkward, crazy thing. I told somebody in 2023 versus 2020. This is how we've changed and grown.
Right.
But literally, I mean, I just I think it was I had surgery last Monday on my knee, and they said that was the first day. Yeah, it was the first day that the medical industry at least here, was allowed. Johnson County was allowed to not have masks, and they were all excited. And nobody had masks on that day.
Yeah.
Which was like, I still think to myself, like, Jesus, this was fucking 3 years ago. You're
Yeah, I
still
know.
wearing masks? I mean, like, there's,
And I was a diligent mask wearer because I was like, it didn't bother me. So I was like, what the fuck? I mean, it didn't really bother me. So I didn't care that much. But as soon as they said the mask could come off, and I do have, well, you have arthritis as well. So some of the medications we take can lower our immune system. So I was kind of worried about it that way. But I still ditched the mask,
Yeah.
pretty much as soon as they said that you could. I think I hesitated just to see how everyone else was playing it out. And then I was like, okay. And I think,
the thing that bothered me and still does to this day, and I get it. I mean, if you have, like you said, deficiencies and you're more susceptible, I get that. But I'm like, we have an antidote now. We have a system. They have so many drugs that they've created since COVID to treat COVID. They're like, but I see still to this day. I mean, I go to Walmart, people are masked up. I'm like, I can't. I hate it. I couldn't breathe through them. I really couldn't. It made me sick, nauseous. So, but we had to wear them on the truck. I was that first year, and
I was actually in a store. Probably it was during the holidays, so sometime before the end of last year, and I just had a dry throat, and I coughed into my elbow. I coughed, and like an employee ran up and goes, can I ask you to put the mask on? I go, sure. And they went to hand it to me. I go, are you going to ask? And they go, will you put this on it? I go, I will not. I just have a dry throat. I'm sorry. And I walked off. Because I'm like,
that's funny you said that, because now I have to preface everything. If you sneeze, God forbid, somebody sees it, they're like, no, listen, man, I just sneeze. That's it. That's it. I don't have COVID. I mean, like,
I do like to throw people I don't really care for under the bus. Like if they cough, I'm like, that sounds really gooey, or that sounds COVID-y. No, I don't have the COVID. I'm like, okay, that's fine. You don't, I was just thinking it sounded worse than normal. So, so here's the deal. You and I kind of discussed before how long this would go on. I'm going to give you the opportunity at this point, because I think we've come to where Tina's Trucks is at this point.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of other things that I want to talk about. And I think a lot of them, you and I, because I think we see the same way on many of the challenges in the employment and things. I think that could be a whole other episode. So I wanted to give you the opportunity. We could continue on, or I think this was a great episode. I've loved talking to you. And as long as you'll commit to come back at some point to talk about everything else. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I mean, the genesis of it and what we discussed was, as a small business that are maneuvering through COVID. I mean, I don't think you hear a lot of stories such as mine or anybody else that you would touch that went through something like that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you had a different plan altogether. I mean, sure, there's stories out there out the ass people have told you about, whether my industry or some other, but we all have gone through the evolution of that has been, that 3 year, probably let's call it 3 years, honestly. I mean, because it still lingers today. I mean, from 20 to 23, it's like life changed dramatically, man. I mean, it's just like, in some instances, things got better, and obviously the fact that everybody went through and survived, or God forbid, nobody wants to forget about the people that died. I mean, a lot of people did die, but I mean, like the fact is that it's a sad fact. It's true, but we couldn't stop it. I mean, it was terrible. It was took control of everything. But
one of my fears came kind of fruition through the COVID. I had always feared that companies like McDonald's used to say when their workers wanted $15 an hour, if you want $15 an hour, we'll just make a machine to take your place. Well, COVID made it where all these companies started making machines or streamlining the process. That I remember I was the Nikon rep at Best Buy when COVID was hitting. I remember when it was first going back to the TV department, and you would be watching the stock market just crash as they had their little whatever every single day. And, but at that time we had this fully staffed store. We had fully staffed customer service. We had a fully staffed just cashiers. And, now they want people to ring their own shit up on their app.
Right.
They go, oh, you can just scan it and ring it, and then we'll just verify it when you walk out the door. It's like, so that was one of my fears, but there were a lot of things that took place. I'm glad that you, yourself, your wife, your family as a whole, and Tina's Trucks made it through this so wonderfully. Because I mean, that's so much. I mean, you have to remember that you were 2.5 years into your relationship where now you're having to spend 24/7, with that person. So that had to be a change. But next time you're on the program, I definitely want to talk to you because there's challenges that we both talk about in the work environment, employing people, the labor. Fuck almighty.
I'd love to. I can spend 2 hours on the next segment telling you about that. I mean, I can tell you stories about what I've gone through with, I'm offering high school kids, people that are freshmen in college or JUCO that don't have any food, $25 an hour to work for me, cash. Uncle Sam, but let's say this, nobody's listening, but I'm just saying that they look at me like, I'm like,
yes,
really? 25 to 40 hours a week, cash on the table.
Fuck.
You don't want to take that?
I don't understand people these days. I literally don't.
No. And every time I see a name come across my desk or a resume, first thing I look is the address. If it says Johnson, somewhere in Johnson County, I get nervous. If it's over South Overland Park, I'm like, God, I don't want that kid.
Yeah. It is tough because, and if people, and this is, I'll preface what we'll talk about next time when he's talking about Johnson County here in Kansas. It's a very affluent area. And generally the reason many, not most, but many of those kids have jobs is because their parents say you need a job. So they don't give a shit and it shows in their work and you fire them. And then their parents just go, now you need to get another job. So,
conversely, their parents are they're like the affluenza kids, where they like give them, when you turn 16, you get a $40,000 Jeep loaded, everything you want, you get a credit card, and they're like, work? What? Why would I fucking work? And that's sickening, but that's the fact.
Someone actually used the thing when I was working. There was a high school guy that graduated. He goes, I just bought that. I think it was a Charger, a brand new Charger for graduation, and I go, you bought it? And he goes, yeah. And I go, your parents didn't buy it for you for graduation. He goes, no, I used all my graduation money.
Wow.
I know. I was like, but they still don't see that. It's like, there wasn't your money. I mean, it's not you save for
that. You didn't earn it.
Right. Like there's a reason when you buy a house that generally banks want to see that you've had money in the bank for some time. That you just didn't deposit it all yesterday. Okay. That is definitely going to be a long show, much longer than this, and probably... I'm probably going to have my bong packed at that point for that conversation. So
I like that. Yeah, for sure.
So, hey, Rick, before we sign off, is there anything that you want to tell the audience? And I will, when we post this, I will on the Instagram page be able to post some links that you'll give me as well. But anything you want to say to the audience?
No, I mean, I just, in retrospect, obviously what I've done the last 3 years, knowing what was forthcoming back in 2020. No, I mean, I'd still push forward because that's the kind of person I am. I wouldn't give up, but it was a very, very tough time for myself and for the listeners, obviously everybody in the United States and the country and the world, because everything changed as we knew it. And now we live a different life. I mean, thinking about people working from home versus going to the office, and I can assume how that's affected productivity across the board for all companies,
right?
But not to mention the real estate value it means for them. Like, well, shit, if I've got 60 agents, it's a call center for somebody, and they're like, if I'm got 45 at home, why do I need to rent? Why am I paying for the lease, right? So they get rid of it, they're done. I mean, it really has changed dynamics for us moving forward, of like, well, each company's independent of each other, but if they look at their P&L and they're successful doing that, following that business model, then shit, they're going to keep following it, right? So that's the way it's going to be. And COVID has brought some things to light like that were positive, I guess, for the bottom dollar and NOI, net operating income for certain companies. But for us, it was, and again, like it just put me back 3 years in our plan. And I think, we've done well. 2020 was a struggle, and 21, we were increased our revenues over 25% over last 20. In 2020, we finished up about 60% over 21. That was our biggest growth. And I'm forecasting us to almost double last year's revenue this year. So, keep your head down, keep working. Don't, my message is that, nothing is shit. It's going to turn out well, but there's going to be a lot of pain in the process, especially coming through what we've all done,
right?
What we've all endured in the last 3 years.
I mean, there's pain in any startup, but man, I mean, literally, if someone was going to say, let's make this as bad as possible. So we're going to have a pandemic.
Yeah.
And then what industry should they be in? Food. That's great. What type? A truck or somewhere where the one here locally that I have not gone to since the pandemic is BB's Lawnside Barbecue, which they used to have the picnic table. So it was communal seating. Like they would have them all connected. And they were fairly long. There were a couple aisles, but it wasn't just like different picnic. It was where you basically had to sit with other. So I haven't been, but yeah. That is crazy. And hold on, I was going to say I applaud you, but I actually have applause that I forgot about. So, but I mean, one final question. Now, I know that you've made it. I know that you said the perseverance and everything. So we know that you did not give up. But was there ever a time in the last 3 years where you're like, just fuck this? I am going back to something that, whatever it is, whatever.
Yeah.
You did.
I did. I mean, there's a point where obviously I wouldn't have said that when we were still in the muck of it, the deep shit, so to speak, because the hotel industry was still.
There was nothing to really. There was not. What would have been your fallback wasn't just as bad as disarray.
Yeah. Right. It was like, it's not like I'm a teacher and I was like came and did this. I could have went back to being a teacher, but I mean, like that wasn't the industry. Like the industry I was in was even worse off. So it was like I didn't have a fallback. It was like So, the fact is that we didn't give up. We kept pushing forward, and obviously we're going to reap the benefits at some point. It's an ever moving evolution process to get this thing, this albatross off the ground. But mark my words, we are going to franchise in a year, and you're going to see Tina's trucks all over the Kansas City and hopefully United States. So that's my goal.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you being on this. It was so nice to catch up with you. I'm glad that I actually have. I was going to mention when I met my wife, the day after I met my wife, I told my roommate, Kristen, I met the girl I'm going to marry. And she's verified that, 27 years later, she still goes, oh, yeah, I was there and I remember that. And I don't see Jean, or I can't even remember the last time I talked to my cousin. But I was going to say it was nice to have someone verify, because that could have been an alternate universe where I said that. So I'm glad that you look fat in those pants. Because when I tell that story, people are like, you did not say that. I'm like, well, yeah, I did.
I tell that story a lot. That's the best one line you can ever, like the revenge thing. It was fucking hilarious. I loved it. I still think about it this day.
Oh, that's awesome. So, hey, Rick, thank you for spending the last hour plus with me. I really appreciate it. I know that the listeners will really appreciate it too, because they've got to not only learn a little about you, Rick Ross, not the rapper Rick Ross, but you, Rick Ross. And then they've also got to find out about how because that's the real story. Yes, Tina's Trucks is amazing food, but I do know a lot of our listeners aren't in the greater Kansas City area right now, so they can't experience that. But what they can experience is your story of starting this particular type of business at just the absolutely worst time. So that's a great story for everyone to have heard tonight.
Correct.
So
yes.
Okay. Thank you so much. And I will hold you to being on again. For everyone else, thank you all for listening to the show. You guys know me. My name's Ro. I'm the Stone Genius. I'll talk to y'all soon.
Thank you. All right, guys.